evening, ladies and guests. Honorable Glenys Hannah Martin, Acting Prime Minister and Minister of Education, Technical and Vocational Training. Honorable Madam Justice Joyanne Ferguson Pratt. Mrs. Lorraine Simonet, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education, Technical and Vocational Training. Mrs. Dominique McCartney Russell, Director of Education, and members of the Executive Leadership Team of the Ministry of Education. Dr. Robert J. Blaine III, President of the University of the Bahamas. Brother Dr. David Wilson, President of Morgan State University. Brother Kevin A. Baston, Acting President of the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute. Dr. Marie Aki, Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs of the University of the Bahamas. Mr. Joe Stubbs, Vice President of Student Affairs. Ms. Erica R. Lewis, Political and Economic Chief of the U.S. Embassy, Nassau. Ms. Ali Kala Olson, Public Affairs Officer of the U.S. Embassy, Nassau. Brother Devontae D. Roll, Southern Region Assistant Vice President of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Brother Algernon M. Cargill, Bahamas Area Director of the Florida District. Brother Levert Ross, President of Iota Epsilon Lambda. Brother Ravano Ferguson, President of the Sigma Beta Lambda Chapter in Freeport. Johnson Roll, President, Nassau, Bahamas, from the NPHC, and Chapter Presidents. The University of the Bahamas, in conjunction with Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and the Bahamas Alpha's Educational and Leadership Foundation, warmly welcomes you to the 9th Annual Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Lecture. This year's theme, we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. This is taken from a letter from Birmingham Jail, written by Dr. King on April 16, 1963, while he was imprisoned in Birmingham, Alabama, for leading a non-violent protest against segregation. This profound statement is a powerful defense of civil disobedience and remains a cornerstone document of the American Civil Rights Movement. My name is Leslie Dawn Wilson, President of the FAMU chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, seated right here at the University of the Bahamas. And I am a graduating senior, majoring in law and criminal justice. It is both an honor and a privilege to serve as your moderator this evening at the 9th Annual Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Lecture. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for your brethren to dwell together in unity. Before we begin, it is fitting that we acknowledge and honor God for allowing us to gather in celebration of the life and legacy of our beloved brother, Reverend. To bring the invocation, please welcome Brother Canon Andrew Toppin.
Please stand. Let us pray. On this, the 9th Annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Lecture Series, remember the immortal words of Dr. King today. I will dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not judge by the color of their skin, but by the content of their. They'll learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. The time is right. It's always right to do what is right. We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today, and we are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. Holy Scriptures record, the Lord said, I observed the misery of my people who are in Egypt, I have heard their crying on account of their taskmasters. I've also seen how the Egyptians oppressed them. So come, I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Almighty God, by the hand of Moses your servant, you led your people out of slavery, free at last. Grant that your church, for an example of your prophet Martin Luther King Jr., may resist oppression in the name of your love, and may strive to secure for all your children the blessed liberty of the gospel of Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Thank you, Brother Toppin. The preacher, scholar, and civil rights leader became a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the first fraternity of African American men, on June 22, 1952, at Boston University, while pursuing his doctoral degree. As an Alpha man, Brother King embodied the essence of service and advocacy, building bridges and knocking down walls. Dr. King is best known for his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech delivered on August 28, 1963, at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. Through nonviolent protests during the 1950s and 1960s, he helped dismantle legalized segregation in public facilities across American South, leading to the most significant advancement in civil rights legislation since the Reconstruction era. Did you know that Dr. King's Nobel Peace Prize acceptance, Oslo, Sweden in 1964, was actually written right here in Bimini, in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas? To bring the official welcome, please join me in welcoming Dr. Robert Blaine, President of the University of the Bahamas.
Good evening. Standing on the established protocol, I wish to welcome you this evening. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the University of the Bahamas for our 9th annual Reverend Dr. Luther King Memorial Lecture. And what I want to say is that I hope that this is not just the 9th, but this is the beginning of the permanent Dr. Martin Luther King Memorial Lecture Series. January 15th would have been the 97th birthday of Martin Luther King. And he lived and worked in a time of immense social strife. A time embodied by the United States wrestling with the dilemma of the moral universe and whether it truly bends towards justice. In some ways, that sounds a lot like today. I'm reminded of the decade of 1955 through 1965, when Dr. King achieved some of his most transformative victories. One of those victories was the desegregation of the Montgomery bus system. During that time, Black communities cooperated to share resources in a force of self-determination to lead their own futures. We're in a similar time now, and I'm excited to host Dr. David Wilson, president of Morgan State University, who will bring our lecture this evening. I'm excited because I see this as another opportunity to build further bridges, to partner between universities, and truly think about how we can share resources in order to advocate and create the futures that all of our students deserve. I hope I'm not spoiling I'm not spoiling anything by saying that President is going to talk a little bit about the fierce urgency of now. And I think that in that, it is appropriate because today we have bringing the past, the amazing present with our beautiful orators who we're going to celebrate this evening, and our true future of how we can move together and work together. I want to thank you for your attendance. I want to thank Minister Hannah Martin for joining us this evening. And as I close, I'm reminded of how none of this work would have happened without partnership in the legal field, because it was how both social resistance and the law came together in order to achieve all of the accomplishments of this period. And so I want to thank Justice Joy Ann Ferguson Pratt, because she hosted President and I last night at her home. It was a tour de force. Not only is she a brilliant burn in the kitchen, it was delicious. So I welcome you as tonight we learn together of the fierce urgency of now, and we think about how we collaborate in order to create the futures that we all determine. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Blaine. Here in the Bahamas, we also honored Dr. King for his earnest support during the nation's struggle for majority rule. Just last Monday, we commemorated the 59th anniversary of Majority Rule Day. Though the injustices we face were severe, our collective determination for a brighter Bahamas prevailed. Please join me in welcoming Brother Algernon Cargill, Area Director and Chairman of the Bahamas Alphas Educational and Leadership Foundation, to bring remarks.
Thank you very much, Brother Wilson. And certainly it's a pleasure to see all of you this evening. Our minister, who's the acting prime minister, we're especially happy to have her support for all of our Alpha functions. Thank you, Minister. Amen. The Bahamas Alphas Educational and Leadership Foundation, in conjunction with the Bahamas area of Alpha chapters, incorporating the Iota Epsilon Lambda chapter, the Sigma Beta Lambda chapter, and the Phi Mu chapter, is pleased to welcome you to our 9th annual MLK Distinguished Lecture. This program features Ms. Zion Carey, student of St. Augustine's College, our 4th oratorical contest winner, and our distinguished keynote speaker, Dr. David Wilson, president of Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. There is no time like the present, and certainly no phrase more fitting for our moment than the fierce urgency of now, powerfully coined by Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. This phrase reminds us that the critical issues we face today must be confronted with courage and intention, just as Dr. King confronted them during his lifetime. It teaches us that we do not have the luxury of silence, nor can we afford to wait for others to speak on issues that matter deeply to us. We and lend our voices. And in the Bahamian vernacular, this does not mean being bigoted. Dr. King himself, he was a man of peace, dignity, and eloquence. Rather, it means recognizing that complacency and silence are no longer sufficient if we are serious about ensuring that our children and their children inherit a Bahamas worth having. We, as Alpha men, are leaders. It is one of the reasons we chose Alpha, and Alpha chose us. We could have joined any number of organizations, but we were drawn to the first intercollegiate Greek letter organization established for African American men, founded at Cornell University, 4th, 1906. Alpha Phi Alpha was created to serve as a crucial support system against racial prejudice while fostering brotherhood, scholarship, and community uplift. That philosophy defined Alpha then, and nothing has changed now. It is therefore our privilege to stand and reaffirm the foundational aims of our dear fraternity: manly deeds, scholarship, and love for all mankind. We are indeed, first of all, servants of all, and we will continue to transcend all. Ladies and gentlemen, the mission of our fraternity is clear. Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated develops leaders, promotes brotherhood and academic excellence, in service and advocacy for our communities. This short but powerful statement guides every activity of an alpha man. This program, our 9th Distinguished MLK Lecture, is a strategic initiative through which we lend our collective voice through our speakers, Ms. Zion Carey and Dr. David Wilson, to the enduring call of the fierce urgency of now. We gather to listen attentively, to absorb the wisdom shared, and to acknowledge and challenge ourselves to reject complacency. We do so as custodians of a strong Bahamian foundation, one we are duty-bound to strengthen and pass on to future generations. Welcome to our 9th ML, a proud partnership between the University of the Bahamas and the Bahamas Alphas Educational and Leadership Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Cargill. To bring the occasion, please welcome Brother Devontae Roll, Southern Region Assistant Vice President of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
Good evening. We, the brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha, Iota Epsilon Lambda, Sigma Beta Lambda, and Phi Mu chapters are proud to honor the life and legacy of our dear brother, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights activist and champion for human rights, equality, and justice. His powerful words continue to inspire, teach, and shape individuals in the U.S. and around the world. Dr. King was a Baptist minister and activist who became the most visible spokesperson and leader in the civil rights movement from 1955, when he led the Montgomery boycott, participated in marches for blacks' right to vote, desegregation, labor rights, and other basic civil rights. Later, he became the first president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He is advancing civil rights through nonviolence and civil disobedience, inspired by his Christian beliefs and the nonviolent activism of Mahatma Gandhi, advocating for the principles of nonviolent protests, affirming that opposition should be tackled with compassion rather than aggression. He helped organize the 1963 March on Washington, where he delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial into Washington, D.C., to over 250,000 civil rights supporters. The speech was a defining moment of civil rights movement and among the most iconic speeches in American history. In celebration in honor of the life and legacy of the civil rights icon that took place today across the United States, we are extraordinarily proud of the story of Dr. King, who wrote his "I Have a Dream" Nobel Peace Prize acceptance and sanitation work speech on the island of Bimini. The theme for this evening's 9th Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Lecture is timely for our region. We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Roy. Dr. Martin Luther King's Jr. purpose of education emphasizes that true education develops intelligence plus character, enabling critical thinking, sifting evidence, and concentrating on worthy educational skills or propaganda. It's crucial for moral development and creating a just society and avoiding the dangers of an efficient yet immoral mind. The significance lies in its holistic vision. Education must foster wisdom and ethics to uplift humanity. forming the foundation for his fight against injustice and achieving the beloved community. Please stand as I now welcome to the podium the Honorable Glenys Haddon Martin, Acting Prime Minister and Minister of Education and Technical and Vocational Training, to bring greetings.
Thank you, sir. Please have a seat, everyone. Thank you. Please have a... Good evening, everyone. I have no prepared remarks. I am here to listen to Dr. Wilson, who I met, who has an incredibly impressive story of his own life, which I think he will probably share in some context, I believe, a little bit. This evening. I was also here on Saturday and saw the young people participate in the debate. And as our moderator pointed out, what I found interesting about those speakers was the bold subject matter that many of them tackled, and which suggested very strong critical thinking, which we just heard about. And that made me feel very good, because this is what I see when I move around and speak to young people. The fact that they are seeing the world with new eyes and with an honest and that surpasses the propaganda we heard about and all of these constraints in thinking. And so that was a very excellent experience to hear those young people. And this is what we want from our young people. When I was coming in here this evening, I saw this stream of young people coming across the road, coming out of classes, and it made me feel so hopeful, because education is the great equalizer, they say, and it is. It's the beginning of critical thinking, building capacity that launches them out into the world, and which we hope they will go out and produce a very positive reality, not just for themselves, but for our nation and the world. And so what we're going to hear tonight, I'm really looking forward from Zion from St. Augustine's, and to hear what they say. I want to thank Dr. Wilson for coming to the Bahamas. I want to thank Alpha Phi Alpha for the work that they're doing in education, in promoting young males, and in advancing even women now. I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, Mr. Cargill, and all of those involved. I'm very proud to be here, and I believe that it's very important, and we've heard this already, that our people become critical thinkers, that we do not succumb to the propaganda, whether it's political, social media, wherever it's coming from. Because when you look at what we are facing as a people, not just in this country, but globally, it's very important that to see with honest eyes. And secondly, to have the courage to move on what we know to be the truth. And I believe if we do that, we will have a better country, a stronger country. And so the dialogue that incites this, puts it on the table, moves beyond the political politeness, and begins to look with great honesty about where we are and where we have come from and where we need to go and what we're seeing right now and how we analyze what's happening, instead of going into our homes and closeting ourselves from what's happening out there in the world, that we engage in whatever capacity that we have, whether it's in the home, in the workplace, on the streets, in our endeavors are, that we are able to influence a better country. And so I welcome this. I just shared the link. Well, I thought it was a link, but it wasn't a link, it was the program. But I shared it widely because really I would have invited at least 50 grade 12 students to come sit in here tonight and listen and to be stimulated by thought that goes to another level. So Martin Luther King Jr. is very closely connected to our history, as you would have heard. He had a connection in Bimini with the Bahamas. He had a connection with Lyndon Pindling and our own political struggle. So we identify very strongly with their struggle because their struggle was our struggle. And our struggle continues, as they say, a luta continua. And so this is how we approach every day in the Ministry of Education. our struggle continues, and we relinquish until we are able to ensure the viability of every young person in this country. So again, thank you for allowing me to be here, and I look forward to hearing you, Dr. Wilson. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. In 1968, shortly before his assassination, Dr. King visited Bimini, where he worked on his powerful and prophetic speech, "I have been to the mountaintop," one of the final messages he would deliver to the world. To bring remarks, please welcome Brother Kevin Baston, Acting President of the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute.
Good evening. Standing on the observed protocol, on behalf of the Board of Directors, management, faculty, and staff of the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute, I congratulate Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and the Bahamas Alpha's Educational and Leadership Foundation and the University of the Bahamas for hosting the 9th annual Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Memorial Lecture Series. And this is a very important and critical thing. And it's always good we're on the global stage and bring it right here at home. And I also want to say that this, by doing this for so many years, it talks about sustaining this platform and the deep commitment, not only in terms of Dr. King's legacy for justice and equal rights and opportunity, but also right here on the Bahamian soil. Dr. King spoke of the fierce urgency of now, and that urgency is evident across the Bahamas in various areas. And we'd have heard from our orators in terms of the different topics that they would have mentioned, and it's all over. And so I want to say, yeah, even at the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute, where we continue to develop tradespeople to mandate of closing the skills gap, the gulf between available skill jobs and qualified workers to fill those jobs. And of course, we're here in terms of academia, and that's one part of the coin. But we cannot leave behind the other part of the coin, right? And it's not one better than the other, but all of them are needed. And I just want to, from our perspective, mention that. And I want to go on and say that, unfortunately, sometimes we elevate some careers while undervaluing others, the doctors, the lawyers, the accountants. But yet, the truth is that no profession stands alone. The doctor cannot practice without the banker cannot work without functioning infrastructure, the accountant cannot serve the clients without the software that depends on the skilled hands to install and maintain and repair. Each of these professionals rely on the electrician, the plumber, the auto technician, the welder, the engineer, amongst others, right? And I think we all would have seen, during the COVID period in particular, how key these trades area were to lives. Can you imagine you get a major situation and there's no tradesperson to do it? So at the end of the day, we want to speak to that. So whether personally and or professionally, clearly technical and vocational professionals are not secondary to other professionals. They are in national development. In fact, BTVI, as a national institution that is now internationally accredited by the Council on Occupational Education, headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia, is doing its part to fill the skills gap. We play a very important role in the nation's economy as we prepare graduates to be globally competitive and economically independent in an ever-demanding ever-changing workforce, a workforce where every honest trade has its value. Indeed, education, and I did say education, I didn't say only a college degree, even though one of our national programs is go to high school, go to college, but education is that equalizer. Brother King spoke about life's blueprint. There again, using construction type with architect, I see Brother Marcus here. He spoke about life's blueprint, dignity in what you do, under avoidance of the stigmas, right? And the determination to achieve excellence in your field, whatever your field may be, to do your work and to do it well. And to be prepared to enter the doors of opportunities that would open for them. Very critical. It goes back to the critical thinking and preparing our students, and not only at the college level, but from primary school level to be, training and development. Therefore, as we honor Dr. King this evening, noting that he was a fierce proponent of balance and equity, let us answer the urgency of now by elevating all forms of learning. Let's get the young men off the streets and teach them a trade. We must also ensure that technical education remains a part of the conversation, as tradespersons are major building blocks in society, deserving of respect and recognition. So once again, congratulations to the organizers and best wishes for continued success as we advance this important dialogue, and not just tonight, but as we go into the future, recognizing the urgency of now. Thank you.
The United States Embassy was established in the Bahamas on July 10, 1973, the very day our nation gained independence. This year marks over 50 years of diplomatic relations. Under President Ronald Reagan's administration, Dr. King's birthday was approved as a federal holiday in 1983, with all 50 states officially observing it by the year 2000. The purpose of this holiday is to promote a day of community service, interracial cooperation, and youth anti-violence initiatives. Please welcome Ms. Erica R. Lewis, Political and Economic Chief at the U.S. Embassy, Nassau, to bring remarks.
Hi, good stand on the established protocol. Honorable Acting Prime Minister, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Cargill, thank you so much again for inviting us. And again, of course, to Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. On behalf of Ambassador Herschel Walker, I want to express sincere regrets that he cannot be with us this evening. He asked me to convey his deep respect for this important occasion and his appreciation to the Bahamas area of Alpha chapters for organizing this 9th annual MLK lecture. The Bahamas holds a special place in Dr. King's story. As we've heard about multiple times, he spent time on Bimini and also here in Nassau. It was here in 1968 that he came to write and reflect, finding peace in these islands as he prepared some of his final sermons. Dr. King's dream was fundamentally about opportunity, a chance for every person to rise based on the content of their character. Today, that dream lives on through economic empowerment, educational excellence, and entrepreneurship. Our nations are partners in creating prosperity and opportunity for all our citizens. The fierce urgency of now means opening doors to better schools, to new businesses, to jobs that support families. It means judging people by their character and their contributions, not by anything else. The United States and the Bahamas share more than geography. We share a commitment to freedom, prosperity, and the belief that every person deserves the chance to achieve their dreams. So on behalf again of Ambassador Herschel Walker, I thank you for honoring Dr. King's legacy and
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. In 2012, the government of the Bahamas and local officials unveiled a bronze bus honoring Dr. King in Bimini, including a second bus located among the mangroves where he spent time writing, reflecting, and finding peace, an enduring symbol of his connection to our islands. In 2023, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Lecture expanded to include a collegiate essay competition at the University of the Bahamas and an oratorical competition for high school students across the nation. To announce this year's MLK Junior Collegiate Essay winner, please welcome Brother Trustee Marcus Lang.
Good evening, all. The topic of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Collegiate Essay Competition was, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now." It is my distinct pleasure to announce the winner of the 2026 Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Collegiate Essay Competition. Mr. Pedro Saunders. Saunders is a sophomore majoring in business management. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Pedro Saunders to the stage.
Good evening. Thank you for this great honor. I only have a few remarks to say, but I would like to thank my friends, my family, and all the wonderful people who are here today. I also like to thank the University of Bahamas and my high school. I see a few of my fellow juniors here today. And I would like to just say, just like Martin Luther King would say it, in order to achieve something, you have to do it now. For it to come now, come later. You have to go now and achieve your dreams. Be yourself, and also remember that you will always be, as long as you try to achieve your goals and not push it to later, you will always do good. And I hope that you all could forgive me because I just got this. But thank you for the great honor. I would love to see us here again next year.
Thank you, Brother Trustee Lang, and congratulations. On Monday, January 12th, 2026, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. oratorical competition was held at the Harry Seymour Auditorium, featuring 20 students, 20 orators from public and private schools across Abaco, Cat Island, Grand Bahama, New Providence, and San Salvador. To introduce the 2026 MLK Jr. oratorical winner, please welcome Brother Ravano Ferguson, President of Sigma Beta Lambda Chapter, Freeport, Grand Bahama.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Zion Carey, a 17-year-old grade 12 student at St. Augustine College, where she currently serves as the Student Council President for the 2025 and 2026 academic year. Ms. Carey is also an exceptional accomplished specializing in long jump and triple jump. Her passion for public speaking began at the early age and since then flourished, culminating in her victory at the 4th annual Martin Luther King Jr. Oratorical Competition, the premier public speaking competition for the high school students in the Bahamas. With aspirations to study law and international relations and multiple university offers from the United Kingdom, Ms. Carey is a young leader deeply committed to justice, leadership, and global impact. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Zion Carey.
been avoiding. 5 seconds to send the apology you know you owe. 5 seconds to chase the dream you placed on pause. 5 seconds and... vanished. That is how fast opportunity moves. That is how fast the moment you were desperately waiting for becomes the moment you have lost. So I begin with the question, how many more moments will you let vanish? How long will you wait before you decide that later is no longer an option? Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, with the fact that tomorrow is today, we are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. It is imperative that I continue on with the full context of his speech at Riverside Church, New York City on April 4th, 1967, when he continued on by saying, in this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being true. There is no time for apathy or complacency. There is only time for vigorous and positive actions. We are living in a society and a world where that urgency and conundrum is calling out to us. Right here, right now. Everyone say now. Now. With power, say now. Now. The king understood urgency as life and death. In the Jim Crow South, waiting meant no access to libraries or schools, drinking from separate fountains, stepping aside on sidewalks, and living under laws written to choke opportunity. Delay destroyed bodies, futures, and the very belief that freedom was ever possible. Today, his warnings meets us again. Not in Alabama or Mississippi, but here, in our Bahamas. The injustices have evolved, but their damages remain. We face a surge in violent crimes that steal young lives before they even begin. Families mourn children lost to shootings. Mothers cry on an eyewitness begging and never come. We watch case after case fade into silence, where victims become headlines for a day and ghosts in weeks. Neighborhoods pleading for protection, justice delayed in courts, communities living with fear as their daily companion, as there is no one yet who has made the bold step to fix this outdated and backlogged justice system. Because when institutions choose convenience over courage, when citizens choose silence over responsibility, the same slow violence Dr. King warned us about starts writing itself into our community. Did we ever think that we would live in a Bahamas where politicians are brutally murdered, where women are children raped, and the justice? 2 years for rape, or 6 years for incest against our girls. That is our reality. Because even though we are faced with the fierce urgency of now, we are turning a blind eye to a justice system that is still decades behind, while injustice takes center stage and our most vulnerable remains at risk. Ladies and gentlemen, the urgency is not just here, it is everywhere. On September 26, 2025, the Honorable Mia Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados, made an urgent plea for change that will help our small nations. She charged that when truth collapses and the trust between nations, citizens, and institutions lose our center of gravity. She bemoans the fact that our nations are divided, and if we do not act now and face tomorrow's problem, we may very well find ourselves at the brink of war and poverty. We must not be oblivious to this reality. Tomorrow's problem is right at our doorstep. There is U.S. war in Venezuela right here in Caribbean waters. And CARICOM leaders have been mum on the issue, but this could be our reality if we do not lend our voices and act now. Because the question now should be, who will be the next Venezuela? This is not a tomorrow issue. This is a now issue. And bear with me as I put in a simple scenario to you. 5 years ago, this was not a problem that teachers were faced with. This was not an urgency that they were confronted with. It was just a tool. Now, Harvard professor Kareem Lakhani says humans with AI will replace humans without. It is a tool we must all learn to use so that we do not get left behind. And I truly apologize to our teachers and those who may not understand that tomorrow is now. Tomorrow is today, and ready or not, you either act or get left behind in a crippling. Because while your students are leaping 10 steps ahead, you are still wondering if their essay is authentic or ChatGPT. And as I leave this stage, here is the truth you must carry with you. It's not just something we walk into, it is something that we build. Every choice you make now, to speak or to stay silent, to act or to avoid, to stand or to shrink, is a brick in a world that you and everyone else will. If we choose courage, we create a Bahamas and a world where children do not grow up dodging bullets, where every student gets the education they deserve, where courts move swiftly and fairly, where justice is not a privilege, but a promise. If we choose compassion, we create communities where the vulnerable are protected. If we choose responsibility, we shape a future where young people rise not because of who their parents know, but by the strength. And if we choose nothing, then nothing.
See yourself here. Whether you're a first-year student or looking to complete your degree, Morgan State University's inclusive learning environment is home to more than 150 academic degree and certificate programs. Join Morgan's Momentum, Maryland's preeminent public urban research university, transforming today's learners into tomorrow's leaders in STEM, social sciences, and the arts. Start your journey today at the National Treasure. Choose.
President Wilson is a transformative and visionary leader.
President Wilson is a game changer.
He is someone who is sought after for his opinion and thought leadership.
David Wilson is helping to lead in critical areas in the national conversation about the future of higher education.
HBCUs are so critical to the competitiveness of our nation, to driving innovation, driving creativity.
As an HBCU leader, Dr. Wilson is just phenomenal in the community.
He came out of major research universities, and he knows what that looks like.
Dr. Wilson got us on a path to become an R2 institution, and now we are all looking at working toward becoming an R1, which is sort of rarefied air.
He is everywhere all the time.
He could be in D.C., speaking with the folks from the federal government, hop a plane at a board meeting for Lumina, coming back on a red eye so that he could participate in some student-led meeting here on campus.
One of the most important numbers to look at is graduation rates, and that's gone up significantly under his tenure.
He clearly is the right person for the right job at the right time.
I have had a very unique set of experiences, having grown up in abject poverty in rural Alabama, the youngest of children, son of her, didn't go to school full-time in 5th grade. I had gone to an HBCU at the undergraduate level, but when I left Tuskegee, all of my higher ed experience had been in predominantly white, primarily big research institutions. When I arrived here, I indiscriminately, and I just ask basic questions. Who are you? Where did you come to Morgan from? What's your major? What I saw was a reflection of me. I had so many epiphanies, and I saw potential. I saw possibility. I saw promise. Then I heard my late father's voice in my head said, now this is where you should be.
David Wilson's transformational leadership of Morgan State University has propelled that institution to new heights.
I've watched the number of degree granting programs go up significantly, and the doctoral degree programs, and the research programs.
The data is telling us that if you target these students early in their undergraduate year, them in a research setting where now the light bulb comes on, 2-3 years later, those students are going to be crossing the stage getting their degrees.
It's an understanding of a lot of our students who are not starting out at great heights, right? And had to overcome challenges to get to a place that they can be.
One thing that I admire about David Wilson has been his enormous love and affection for students, and bringing out of them in 4 years things that they did not know they had in themselves. I see it in his private conversations. I see him paying tuitions for students. I see him encouraging students every day, including those that others have perhaps given up on.
What really drives me every single day is to make sure that others who come from similar backgrounds will have an opportunity to take advantage of a top quality education that would change their lives.
Zion, thank you for your outstanding presentation delivered from memory. A true statement to your discipline and dedication. Continue to excel going forward in your college education. Please congratulate Ms. Zion Carey, 2026 Martin Luther King Jr. Oratorical Competition winner. For the presentation to Zion Carey, 2026 Martin Luther King Oratorical winner, I invite Minister Hannah Martin, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Blaine, VP Stubbs, Principal, and brothers Baston, Cargill, Ross, Lang, Rule, and Ferguson to the stage.
That's a lot of people on the stage.
You have to move this a little bit. Thank you. Let's give Zion another round of applause. To formally introduce tonight's lecturer, please welcome Brother Joash Boyd, Vice President of Iota Epsilon Lambda Chapter, who will introduce the 9th Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Lecture. Thank you.
Good evening. As we gather to honor the life, leadership, and enduring legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., it is both fitting and an honor to introduce a leader whose life, the very principles Dr. King championed: education, justice, service, and the uplifting of humanity. It is my distinct privilege to introduce Dr. David K. Wilson, the 10th president of Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. Dr. Wilson is a visionary educator and nationally respected leader in higher education, whose tenure has been marked by transformative growth, academic excellence, and a steadfast commitment to access and equity. Under his leadership, Morgan State University has advanced its mission as a premier public HBCU and research institution, serving as a beacon of opportunity and generations of students. Guided by a deep belief in the power of education to change lives and communities, Dr. Wilson's leadership embodies the moral courage, purposeful service, and unwavering pursuit of justice that define the legacy we commemorate tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in warmly welcoming to the podium our distinguished guest lecturer to address the topic. We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. Dr. David K. Wilson. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. Brother Hood, before I get into my remarks, though, I really have to say to Zion, that was absolutely terrific. That was amazing. And I know that you have all of these college offers in the UK, but Morgan would like to be competitive as well. But really, first things first, to the Honorable Acting Prime Minister Martin, to Justice Joanne Ferguson, and to all of the distinguished individuals gathered here this evening. Please know that I am deeply grateful. Indeed, I am genuinely humbled to join you this evening as we leadership and enduring legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Yes, this 9th annual gathering is more, in my view, than a ritual of remembrance. No, I think this gathering is a moral checkpoint for us. I think that this gathering is an invitation to us to reflect on how far we have come in the last 60-plus years, but it is also calling upon us to get up now and do something. It is calling upon us to take note, as you've heard in numerous remarks here, relenting efforts to actually take us back 60 years, and we must do something. Yes, we must get out of our houses. We must understand that the urgency is now. And so I express my profound gratitude to the Alphas Bahamas Education and Leadership Foundation and all of the hands that went into making this possible. I thank you, though, for the incredible work that you're doing in producing the next generation of leaders. I have taken your charge seriously, and I am honored to be here at the. I congratulate Dr. Robert Blaine, your new president. Had an opportunity to spend some time with him, and I absolutely know that he is going to be an amazing leader for this amazing university. And so please join me in congratulating President Blaine. And so I really want to honor Brother Cargill's suggestion that my remarks this evening focus on one of Dr. King's most arresting and demanding phrases, the fierce urgency of now. Yes, those words appear in his I Have a Dream speech, which, as you have heard, was delivered in August of 1963, 63 years ago. Those words have not lost their power. They have not lost their bite. They have not lost their relevance. No, that enduring renaissance tells us something very important. You know what it tells us? It tells us that Dr. King was not merely speaking to his moment. He was speaking to the human condition. He was speaking to every generation that was tempted to delay justice, everyone who was tempted to rationalize inequality, or even to mistake comfort for progress. That's who he was speaking to. Dr. King once described his life's work, quote, to make from this old world a new world. Now, that single sentence captures, in my view, who he really was. He was a self-professed dreamer with a clear-eyed grasp of reality. He was a man who understood the world as it was, yet he refused to surrender his vision of that world because he saw the world as it ought to be. And so when you look over most of his speeches and most of his writings, Dr. King made one thing abundantly clear: distinction between empirical reality, that is, the world as it exists, and normative reality, which is the world as it should exist. And so at the heart of his moral philosophy is what I call a deep and unapologetic focus on oughtness. Yes, that's O-U-G-H-T, N-E-S-S, oughtness. Now, oughtness is not abstract. You don't merely think it. You feel it. You feel it in your chest. You feel it in your gut. In that quiet but persistent voice that tells you something is not right. Something is wrong, even when that something has become all too familiar. Even when that something has been normalized. And even when that something has been declared permanent. Oughtness tells you that that should not be. And oughtness is unfazed by long-standing injustice. No, oughtness stands in direct opposition to social arrangements that have taken on the false appearance of reality. And this is critically important because, in my view, oughtness gives us the moral authority to challenge unfair systems and to demand progress grounded in equity, dignity, and shared humanity. Put simply, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. King reminded the world of a radical truth. He said, just because things are a certain way does not mean that they should remain that way. And so now I realize that for some time, this worldview espoused by Dr. King sounds naive, perhaps even at the time irresponsible. To some critics, you see, resemble fuzzy-minded idealism or an adult version of youthful innocence. but Bahamians and Americans all over, let me be clear tonight. Dr. King was no stranger to reality. Dr. King understood power. He understood opposition. He understood all too well danger. He lived in constant threat. Dr. King knew that each sunrise and each sunset that he experienced could be his last. Knowing all of that, Dr. King was not detached from the harshness of the world. No, he wasn't detached because he was anchored to higher principles. He was anchored to principles of love and compassion and universal equity. I cannot stand here tonight and deliver the 9th annual MLK lecture without being true to who the man was. That moral grounding allowed him to make a bold and provocative claim at the time. This was bold. He said at the time, for the first time in human history, he said, humanity possessed the resources and the technology necessary to eradicate poverty, if only we had the willpower to do so. Now, years earlier, as you heard referenced this evening, Gandhi, who also was a fellow traveler on the road of nonviolence, he arrived at the same conclusion when he declared, and I quote Gandhi, he said, "There's not enough on this planet for everyone's," I'm sorry, he said, "there is enough on this planet for everyone's need, but there's not enough for everyone's greed." Now, both Gandhi and King shared what we may call a global consciousness. That is the ability to, and what Dr. King described as, quote, the tyranny of the present, and then to be able to imagine futures that could intentionally be brought into being. Now, Gandhi used nonviolent resistance to help India cast off the yoke of British colonialism, and Dr. King used the same moral force to challenge America to live up to its own constitutional promises, particularly the rights guaranteed to African Americans under the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, ratified between 1865 and 1870. History can't be erased as much as we try. History teaches us some uncomfortable truths. And one of those truths is that laws alone sometimes are simply not enough. You know, you need to have good people in power who are committed to executing and enforcing those laws, and they need to do that with an inclusive, humane, and moral mindset. That was Dr. King. As you heard from Zion, yeah, those laws were on the books. But hey, I grew up just as she described in Jim Crow, Alabama. And on the books, it was like they did not exist because you did not have those kind of people who were centered morally, who were just, who were committed to doing the right thing. And so, yes, I lived through hell. When I talk about racism and all of the obstacles that stand in the way of people that I know are beyond brilliant, this is not some abstraction, because I lived it. I grew up in rural Alabama. Marengo County, in the middle of the Alabama Black Belt. And I'm the youngest of 10 children. Family to go to college. And my father was a sharecropper. He lived on a sharecropping plantation, yes. And there was no law in Alabama that basically said, even though the Civil Rights Act had passed, that, well, you got to send these black children to school that you have. And so my father didn't do that. And he kept my first 5 brothers out of school altogether. They all were literate. And the last 5 of us, we said, look, we need some schooling. And so we absolutely said to him, you have to figure out a way so we can enter a schoolhouse door. And he said, okay, well, I'll figure out a way to send you to school 2 days, 1 week, and then you have to give me 3 so you can pick that cotton. And that's me and my 3 sisters and my brother that followed. And so, yes, I was living that. I was in the 7th grade before I was able to go to school 5 days a week. And as I told the story last night, Judge, let me tell you how that happened, because all this really is the beginning of the way I see the fierce urgency of now. And so how that started was, on one of those days that I was in school, the 6th grade, my 6th grade teacher was the late Mrs. Luvinia Abernathy Coates. I stressed Abernathy, because she, of the late Reverend Dr. Ralph Abernathy, who was Dr. King's right-hand leader. And so she said to me, David, you come up to my desk after school. There's something that I need to say to you, and I want you to go home and tell your father. And I came up to her desk, and she said, look, I want you to go home and tell your father that if he can figure out a way to send you to school 5 days a week, you can go to college. I never heard the word college before. And I ran home and I said, Daddy, Mrs. Coates told me to tell you something. And he said, well, son, what was it? Well, she said, if you can figure out a way to send me to school 5 days a week, I can go to college. And my father, in his own inimitable way, looked at me and he said, boy, let me tell you something. He said, college is for white people. That was his worldview. And we didn't speak about it again. But then I went to school, and the unthinkable happened. Dr. King was assassinated. And all the teachers, Mrs. Coates leading the way, they streamed out in the hallway, crying, we have lost Dr. King. We have lost our leader. What are we going to do? And I witnessed incredible sadness on that day when I was in school that day. And I am sure that his death played a role in convincing my father that he had to put us in a position to also fight the urgency of now, then. And so that's what happened. And then 5 years passed, and it was now time for me to go to college. And as I came to several neighborhoods here in the Bahamas, I witnessed so many who are living in conditions much similar to those that I lived in. We had a little shanty with no plumbing, no electricity, none of the so-called modern conveniences. And in order for me to have literacy, the whites who owned the plantation would bring down to our little shanty Look and Life magazines, I should say. And my mom would have us plaster these things on the wall of the shanty to keep the cold wind out at night during the winter. And so when I would get home from picking cotton, we would grab a kerosene lamp and go around the walls of this shanty, reading how to read. That's how I began to understand how important education was, how transformative it was. And that's why I can stand here, I can stand there, I can stand anywhere, and I speak truth to power because I have earned that right. And so 5 years passed, and it's time for me to go to college. And I get up, and I didn't have very much, barely a change of clothes. And I heard my father get up in the adjacent room, and he came into the front room. And he said, David, call me by my name this time. He said, son, he said, you are about to do something that no one in this family has ever done. He said, you are about to go out that door to college. And he said, now, do you recall what I said to you 5 years ago when you told me you wanted to go to college? And I said, sure, Daddy, I recall, because it was so painful. He said, let me tell you what I was really thinking. What I was really thinking, he said, was how in the world, he didn't exactly use the word world, will I ever be able to pay for you to go to college? He said, but you know, I saw you, and I saw how serious you were about your education. And I've been saving for this day. When I was, and he said, hold out your hand. And I held out my hand, and he put his hands in his overalls. And he pulled out something. He said, now I've been saving this piece of money for you. And he put it in my hand. And he put his hand over my hand. And he said, now, this is all that I have. All that I have. And I'm investing this, son, in you. Give me a return. And I looked in his face, and that was the first time I had ever seen my father cry. The tears were coming down his chin. And I said, yes, Daddy, I will. Went onto the front porch, and as the sun was coming up, I opened my hand, and there in my hand was a crisp $5 bill. That was all that he had been able to save for 5 years. So I knew that that $5 had the value of 5 million because of the struggle involved in saving every Lincoln penny. And so it was at that point that I made a conscious decision, and it was, when I take what Mrs. Coates said to me, and I remember that day, that school, when everything came to a halt, and I remember how my father had just given me the $5, that I am going to live a life of service and difference. I'm not going to merely exist. And so that really brings me to the urgency of now, the fierce urgency of now. Fierce is very important because it does not refer to violence. It refers to clarity of purpose. It refers to a disciplined determination that we're distracted diluted or deferred. And this distinction matters because peaceful protests and nonviolent movements are often deliberately mischaracterized as disorderly or uncivil. In the so-called Oppressor's Handbook, Dr. King reminded us that the rules are very similar and they're not complicated. He reduced these rules to 3 primary rules. And he said, well, first of all, what happens here from an Oppressor's Handbook is that they embrace divide and conquer. Number 2, he said, they discredit, constructive, and protest. And number 3, they then move to defame the motives of those who challenge them and the status quo. Urgency, in King's formulation, rejects half measures disguised as solutions. Urgency stands in direct opposition to gradualism. And gradualism is that seductive idea that justice must wait for a convenient season. And you heard that earlier. But let there be no doubt. There is never, ever a convenient season for justice. Or if you keep waiting and waiting and waiting, you'll discover, as Dr. King wrote in one of his books, that wait means never. And he warned us plainly. He said, quote, there is simply no time to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. He was speaking to us about urgency. He said, because after all, a person holding 4 aces rarely asks for a redeal. You go back a little further, and Frederick Douglass kind of echoed the same thing. And here's what Frederick Douglass said, and I think he said it best. He said, quote, I'm quoting, he said, quote, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. And so as I move toward closing, I think Dr. King would want me this evening to bellow to Bahamians and Americans that moments and movements are made with extraordinary courage. Every successful movement for social change that I know of as a semi-scholar of history, every successful movement shares one common trait, and that is the refusal to settle. And Dr. King led a movement where those martyrs, those disciples, they were not really focused on just tinkering at the margins of injustice. No, they were not simply about rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. They were demanding transformation. We saw it in the Civil Rights Movement. We saw it in for independence, culminating in 1973, as you heard. And we see it whenever people insist on being treated with dignity, whenever they insist on their own self-determination, and whenever they insist on justice. Dr. King also understood something that was quite essential too. He said, movements are not really powered by speeches alone. This is what people say he's a great dreamer. No, he understood that, you got to get up. You got to move. You got to do something. He said, no, movements are carried forward by ordinary people, once again, with uncommon courage. These individuals are not spectators, he said. They are not armchair intellectuals on the front lines. They are students, they are workers, they are elders, they are clergy, they are children. And we look back in history, some of those names we know, but those ordinary people with extraordinary courage, they number in the millions. We'll never know their names. They were ordinary people with extraordinary courage who would not settle. And so, in all of these individuals, unnamed, they were drum majors, to use Dr. King's words. But now, when I use that word tonight, when I say drum major, let me be clear. I'm not talking about the leaders of the Junkanoo Parade down Bay Street, nor the high-stepping drum majors of Magnificent Marching Machine who graced the Rose Bowl Parade. No, I'm not talking about those. What I'm talking about is a different kind of drum major, the kind that Dr. King described in his best-known but profoundly important sermon, The Drum Major Instinct. And that sermon was delivered just 2 months before his assassination. And this sermon is sobering, it is diagnostic, and it is prophetic. Dr. King acknowledged that each of us, that drum major instinct, each of us has a natural desire for recognition. Each of us has in us a natural desire to be seen, to be first, and to impulse, he said, is not inherently bad, but if left unchecked, it becomes destructive. It becomes destructive to individuals, to institutions, and to society itself. Now, if you need evidence, just look around. We see leaders everywhere today that are totally obsessed with self-glorification, convinced that might makes right, that institutions exist to serve them, and that the needs of the many are secondary to the desires of just a few. And these leaders that we see everywhere, they confuse power and they confuse visibility with value. But Dr. King offered a radical alternative to this type of leadership. In common people with extraordinary courage. And he said, be a drum major, but be a drum major for justice. Be a drum major for peace. Be a drum major for righteousness. And then he gave us one of the most liberating truths ever spoken. He said, everybody can be great because everybody can serve. So in a world increasingly driven by attention, by self-promotion, Dr. King's message almost feels subversive. Some have said attention, the desire to seek attention, is now overwhelming. It is the new currency. And if that's true, then the antidote to that, in my view, is service. Service is the most undervalued asset we have. And Dr. King's vision of servant leadership is not soft, is not passive, it is morally demanding. And so I say to our students here at the University of the Bahamas and students who are watching this all over the country in particular, who will be the first one to say to you, pursue your dreams boldly, seek fulfillment, but remember the words of Emerson, who wrote, quote, "The purpose of life is not just to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate. It is to make some difference that you have indeed lived." And so Dr. King's final advice also remains our charge. He said, quote, "He who is greatest among you shall servant." And so we need more leaders who are infused with this ethic. We need these leaders in our families, in our institutions, in our governments, and in our communities. And we must be vigilant. Dysfunctional leadership reveals itself in three primary ways. Number one, when there is ego over empathy. Number two, when there's chaos over clarity. And number three, when there's rhetoric without accountability. And so I ask you, examine your motivations. We encourage you to seek leadership, but ask yourself, why are you doing it? Is it to be seen, or is it to serve? Now more than ever, we need new armies of compassionate, skilled servant leaders. Leaders who are willing to bring the better angels out of our nature into the public square. If we do that, ladies and gentlemen, if we meet this moment with courage, with humility and resolve, then we will not merely commemorate Dr. King's legacy. We will live it every single day. And in doing so, we will confront head on and then answer forcefully the fierce urgency of now. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson, for an inspiring and thought-provoking address. To bring the vote of thanks, please welcome Brother Levert Ross, President of Iota Epsilon Lambda Chapter.
Good evening, all. On behalf of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and the Bahamas Educational and Leadership Foundation, in collaboration with the University of the Bahamas, it is my profound honor to extend sincere thanks to each of you for attending the 9th Annual Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Lecture. Tonight we have come together to celebrate the life, the vision, and the enduring legacy of a man whose courage transformed nations and continues to inspire generations. In the life of Dr. King, where he spent time in reflection and worked on some of the most influential writing and speeches of his day. This sacred connection reminds us that his message was not confined to one nation, but embraced humanity as a whole. We begin by expressing our sincere gratitude to President Blaine III, along with the faculty and staff of the University of the Bahamas, for once again partnering with Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and the Bahamas Alpha's Educational and Leadership Foundation
in advancing this important and meaningful initiative. We also extend a heartfelt thanks to Minister Glenys Hanna Martin for continued support of the fraternities throughout the years. To the planning team, we thank you for your dedication, commitment, and tireless efforts in presenting this 9th annual MLK Junior Memorial Lecture Series, the 4th MLK Junior Oratorical and Collegiate Essay Competitions as well. To our program participants, Brothers Leslie D. Wilson, Kenan Toppin, Brother Algernon Cargill, Ravano Ferguson, Terry Murray, Joash Boyd, and Devontae Roll, we say thank you for your contributions and participation. A very special thank you is extended to our keynote speaker, Brother Dr. David K. Wilson, 10th President of Morgan State University, Baltimore, Maryland. Dr. Wilson, your thoughtful and timely elaboration of this year's theme, we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now, challenged us, and reminded us of our responsibility to act with purpose and conviction. Dr. King taught us that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Tonight, in gathering to reflect, learn, and elevate his legacy, we collectively answered that call. I believe Dr. King would be proud to see this room, a testament to the ongoing work of justice, scholarship, and community. He would be thankful for your presence, your support, and the vital work we continue in his name. So now, here is our challenge. Honor this pride, this trust, not just with applause, but with action. Look to your left and your right. Your community is your assignment. Go and build it. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and friends, thank you for helping to make the 9th annual Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Lecture a resounding success. You are warmly invited to join us for refreshments in the courtyard. Again, thank you and good evening.